Hello, hello. Here. Oh no, there we go. Hello. Sometimes it's this. Hello, hello. No,
Still nothing.
no. Mm-mm. Testing. One, two, three. Testing. Hello.
I'm hearing you just fine.
I don't hear nothing. No,
Nothing?
no. Hello. Do you hear me? Oh no. Hello.
Yeah, I do.
I don't hear nothing. Here, let me just put this one in there real quick and just let me see. Oh, no, it needs this. It might be this. Testing one. Yeah, I hear me in here. So it's this thing. Hello, hello. Oh, here's one here. There was one up here.
Oh, yeah, I was just.
So let me see if this works.
You need any more?
Testing. Yeah, there it is. Okay, perfect. All right. Let's rock this show.
Let's do it.
All right, here we are in the studios of Alpha Media, and we are at WSGW. I am your host today, Larry Rodarte, and we are on the Facebook social media stream because we're going to start a new show on Mi Gente On Air. So I want to encourage everybody to come on into the room and join me as we talk about Chicano, the term Chicano, the history, how it's Chicano Week here in Michigan on February the 2nd through the 8th, as well as a young individual who's going to join me to talk about his involvement with Chicano history here in Michigan and just everything that you may want to know about Chicano. And you can bring in a question or a concern that you may have into the chat room to talk about this term that not everybody identifies with, but a lot of us do. So let's talk Chicano History Week and the term Chicano here on Mi Gente On Air.
Welcome to Mi Gente On Air on 100.5 and 790 News Radio WSGW and online WSGW.com. Now, here is your host, Larry Rodarte.
Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Mi Gente On Air, where we talk about Latino culture as well as concerns and contributions week after week. And this is our fourth year of Mi Gente On Air at WSGW Studios here at Alpha Media. And so I want to just welcome everybody on this frigid, cold January day. It's January the 15th, and we're mid-January already from the new year. So happy new year again to those that may have not tuned in last week. But we're here. We're in 2024. And today's show is rather it's surprising because so many years as I have been a Latino in the state of Michigan or Mexican American, and we struggle sometimes with the terms that we are calling ourselves these days, especially with the new term of Latinx. But there's a term that has been around for a long time, and that is Chicano. And Chicano, we're going to talk a little bit about the definition and the history, as well as a documentary film called American Homeboy, which is going to be playing throughout Michigan during Chicano History Week. Now, did you know that February 2nd through February 8th, is Chicano History Week here in the state of Michigan. It has nothing to do with Hispanic Heritage Month. It's its own week of celebrating the term and the culture of Chicano. And I have a young individual here with me today. His name is Angelo Cap. Many of you may know him from the community and his involvement, and he is involved with this Chicano Week and this documentary. So please help me welcome today here on Mi Gente on Air, Angelo Cap. Angelo, how are you?
Hey, thank you for having me on, Larry.
Well, it's a pleasure. I've known you since you were a little boy, and now you're a grown man, and you and your brothers are doing your thing, and it's so nice to see you involved in making the Hispanic community here in Saginaw active and involved. You're involved in different things, and we're going to talk about that tonight. But I want to start with who you are, what your background is, because we do that with all our guests, and just kind of give a feel to my listeners who Angelo Cap is.
So I was born and raised in Saginaw. I lived here all my life. And my background is I started in the cooking industry, right? Hospitality and foods. I love cooking, it put me in front of a grill, bake. I could do it all. But I worked for the automotive industry at TRW for about 7 years. Then they shut down the plant. So I went back to school at Delta. And I had a 2-and-2 program with Northwood for advertising and marketing. But I always had a dream of, one day having a magazine company and possibly advertising company. And, lo and behold, I think life kind of gets in the way and you're like, well, it's not time yet. There's needs to be a clear path. And so I just kept on procrastinating until I went to Terry DeParin's The Class, right? And he talks about start with the first step and the next step will present itself. And so I used to suffer from analysis paralysis. And so I just changed the way that I think. And it's like I'm leading by, for the first step. And, with this project, a lot of people have come into my life that are active in this project. And so I think in the grand scheme of things, when they say when you're working on something, people will come to you, that energy will follow you back. It sure does. And it's crazy to experience that.
Oh yeah, that's really something. Now Terry DeParin, he's over there in DeParin Corporation, over there by the Gray Iron plant. Well, formerly the Gray Iron plant, but he is quite an entrepreneur in the city of Saginaw as well. Water filter systems around the world. That's what his company's involved with, and he's a great leader in our community. So I'm glad to hear that you're taking classes, those classes that he offers
Absolutely.
in leadership. And what's important is the idea that we first identify what Chicano is. And I want to just read what the definition is that I found online, because it's very similar to what I had already known, but there are some differences. And I just want to read this to the audience. Chicano or Chicana is a chosen identity of some Mexican Americans in the United States. The term became widely used during the Chicano movement of the 1960s by many Mexican Americans to express a political stance founded on pride in a shared culture, ethnic, and community identity. So that's the definition of Chicano. And I want to talk with you a little bit, Angelo, because you're a young Mexican American from Saginaw here. And sometimes, like on this show, we have struggled with the terminology that we call ourselves. And there's Latino, Hispanic, there's Latinx, there's Chicano. There's a number of different terms that identify us as Mexican Americans in our area. So what do you identify with, and how do you feel about the new term of Latinx?
So when I grew up, I always wondered what made me Mexican. Was it going to St. Joe's Church? Was it attending your Cinco de Mayo events? Was it going to the panderia and getting sweetbreads and barbacoa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I struggle to find out, is it the traditions that make me Mexican, or is it my family lineage makes me the Mexican that I am? And so growing up, I grew up on the east side of Saginaw. People would say, "You're white. Hey, white boy." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm Mexican." You know what I mean? So then they would refer to me as amigo. And, going to school on the west side in the township, I was obviously pretty much the only one there in the classroom. And so I used to say, "Hey, I'm Mexican." You know what I mean? But I think growing up throughout the years, I realized that, only knowing the Mexican culture, there's so many different Latino cultures out there. And I wasn't exposed to that, right? I mean, if
Hmm.
you look at the different music, bachata, reggaeton, um, salsa, merengue, there's so much different rhythm and it has that African beat drum to it, you know? And really nowadays, when people say, "Well, what are you?" I say Mexican, but when I generally speak, I say Latinos, right? Because I feel like we need to bring each other up to the table and put the spotlight on everybody because we're all similarly the same. We're different in some aspects, right? With food and just a little bit of the Spanish slang, right? Means
Hmm.
different words. But at the end of the day, if you look at the mainstream economy, Latinos are everywhere now, and corporations are gravitating towards how do I attract that market because we're some of the most loyal customers, right? Like I remember my grandmother drinking Folgers coffee, and it's like these brands resonate with our families, and we don't switch brands. Once we stick with the brand, we're there, and then our kids are taking off and they're drinking the same stuff too. So it's just interesting how we operate as a culture. We're very collective society.
Well, how about Sanka? Do you remember the coffee Sanka? You're probably too young. And so some of my audience is probably laughing at that term because that was a brand name coffee that was very popular back, oh gosh, in the 70s probably. But, I do want to say something about and kind of go off on what you said there. And that is the idea about, there's different rhythms, there's different music, there's different foods that are coming from different areas, whether it's Puerto Rico or whether it's Mexico or Guatemala, Honduras, wherever. But you know what? We here in Saginaw, we have our own culture and we are a mix. Many of us are a mix, and predominantly our parents, our grandparents came from the Texas borders, Texas Mexico borders, and they came up here. And we are, most of us, third, fourth generation, and we are our own culture. Whether we are making Tex Mex foods like patitos or whether we are listening to Tejano music, Saginaw has a very vibrant culture and heritage of the Mexican people. And that's something to be proud of. It really is, because sometimes we get knocked for, oh, well, you're not Mexican enough. You're not,
Mhm.
American enough or whatever. That term that always was in the
Exactly.
movie Selena. We
Yep.
all kind of go off that. Well, you know what? We have gone beyond that now. We're in 2024 and we have a culture and a heritage here in Saginaw that we can be very, very proud of. And it's a mix of being Mexican and it's a mix of being American, and we just combined all that together and we celebrate and we have a lot of passion as Mexicanos, Mexican Americans here in the Great Lakes Bay region. So I just wanted to add that to my listeners because I think Angelo is a good example of that, as he is, you know, a young man, a young individual, still hanging on to his roots and trying to identify himself. And I think in your 20s and your 30s, you do that. You question, well, who am I? Am I Mexican American? Am I Mexican? And then when you get in your 40s, you kind of like identify, and you kind of go your way and how you're going to perceive yourself, as well as proclaim yourself out in the community. And then as you get older, and like in my age group, we kind of know more or less who we are. We've seen a lot more. And the evolving change that is happening from, say, like the 1970s and the 80s, 90s, where we are today in 2024 is just amazing to me for what I have seen in my lifetime. So it's awesome. It's awesome to celebrate. And I want to make sure that we understand that Chicano Week, as I said, was February 2nd through the 8th here in the state of Michigan. And there was a proclamation that was given last year by Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Now, I understand that Chicano History Week has been celebrated since the 60s here in Michigan, but I just want to read, as she says, whereas Chicano History Week commences on February 2nd, 2022, the 175th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. So she's recognizing that. Our governor, Whitmer, is recognizing that, where she said, whereas Michigan made history during the 1960s as the first state in the U.S. to officially recognize Chicano History Week. And whereas the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, a document significant to the United States and Mexico, ended the 2-year Mexican-American War in 1948. Now, is that something that you understood, or was it 1848?
Yeah, so when I looked at the proclamations on the website, there definitely was a typo, so it should be 1848.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I read that as well. But so here we are, like I said, 2024, and Chicano History Week. We always hear about and we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month in September. That's when many of the Latino countries celebrate from September 15th through October 15th, and that's when many of their independences were founded and signed. But here we've got Chicano History Week. And I remember a long time ago, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what does Dad consider himself? Because I kind of made up a little rhyme, and it went like this. It said Valeriano, because that was his name. Valeriano es Chicano. And she says, no, wait, hold on a minute. Your dad doesn't identify himself as Chicano, because I think in his generation, in his era, growing up, that was kind of a political term as a rebel.
Yeah.
And some people, didn't want to identify with the belligerent type of Mexican American that was fighting the system. And then comes the 60s, and you have people I know that like attended Michigan State University, Daniel Sosa Jr., as well as Rosa Morales, and other Latinos in the community that they did identify with the term Chicano. Herminio Ortega, Jose Gonzalez, all those great people that I stand on their shoulders as a Mexican American today, they identified with that term Chicano. And at MSU, we had a room that was specifically for the Mexican American students, Chicanos. It was in the Wilson Hall, and there was an organization called Chispa, Chicano, Hispanic. I don't even remember the whole terminology now, but my generation in the 80s, we actually changed the terminology because we didn't identify with Chicano.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Herminia, Jose, Luis Garcia, those individuals, they found it kind of disrespectful from our generation that we didn't see it the way they did. And so we kind of try to fix that. And I know through the years that name has changed, the acronym for Chispa. And today they're still going strong over there at Michigan State University, and they still are meeting in that hall in Wilson Hall. And there's just a lot of history there now, and credit to Diana Rivera for keeping the Cesar Chavez Library as well at the MSU library. And that's really something big. But Angelo, let's talk about Chicano History Week and your involvement. How did you get involved with a documentary, American Homeboy, that's going to be shown during Chicano History Week in different locations throughout the state of Michigan? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I guess I would have to start back all the way in September of 2023. At the time I was working on the stuff with Lead, right? And, sometimes I would go on Facebook once in a while. So social media to me can be addictive, but it also can be a good thing, right? You have to know your cutoff limits. And for me, I just happened to see a post that John Ayala posted, and it was a trailer for American Homeboy. And so I checked it out, and he said it would be cool if we could bring this to Saginaw.
Yeah.
So after watching that trailer, like, it was explosive. Like, I felt like, wow, we're bringing it to Saginaw, right? And
well, let me stop you right there real quick, but keep your thought, because I want to identify what American Homeboy actually is for my listeners. It's a documentary film directed by Brandon Lauren Maxwell that explores the complex origins of Pachuco and Cholo culture, which sprouted from American soil more than 100 years ago in response to wartime settlement, social alienation, and government discrimination, only to become a pop culture phenomenon. That's the terms Chicano as well as Pachuco and Cholo culture. Cholo culture. That's CHOLO. The film draws from rare interviews shot on 5K with leading Mexican American historians, academics, artists, activists, cholos themselves and former law enforcement officers against a backdrop of 50 hours of restored archaeal footage. So continue on where you were.
Yeah. So, I looked at the trailer that John Ayala had posted.
Mhm.
And, for those of you who don't know, John Ayala is the project manager for the ARPA program with the MAC, the Mexican American Council. And so he shared it. He said, it would be cool if we could bring this to Saginaw. And I said, we can do it. Let's do it. So I went on to the website, chelatv.com, and that's where the documentary, you can watch it right now. There's a subscription service. You pay per month, and they also have a lot of different material. The director does a podcast. He has papers that he writes, articles, and he has a interesting cast that give their perspective on it. So it's not just him speaking about it. It's a multitude of perspectives. But I reached out to Cella TV, right? And I said, well, how much is it to bring out the director? And then I seen the link to his own personal website, and I reached out to him, and I didn't know that I'm talking to the same guy, right? And so really, trying to see if he can do a Q&A, right? And he's like, yeah, we do this all the time. And so I was stuck on, okay, what does it take? What does it take to bring him out here? How much is it going to cost? Where are we going to show this at? And in my mindset, right, I thought, well, we definitely want to show it in Saginaw, but what about the rest of the state, right? There's so many Latinos that are in the state, and it's over 560,000 since the last census of 2022, which represents about 5.6% of Michigan's population, right? And so definitely I thought about Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Holland. And I wanted to have a venue at a college or university because I feel like it's important to teach our young leaders of tomorrow about our history, because if they don't understand it, more than likely it's going to repeat itself, right? And so really, I started this journey back in September, and it's been many different things that I've been learning, right? So on top of launching this project, I actually launched my own company, which is Nuestra Cultura Multimedia Productions, right? And the basis for my company is to shine the light on all Latino cultures, right? Not just Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, everyone. Because I feel like if we're united on a front, there's so much more we could do together, right? And so with this film project, it's free. There's no charge. I believe that we have to share our culture with people. And this isn't just for our people, it's for everyone, right? Because a lot of people don't understand some of the reasons why, the older generation might feel a certain way is because they experienced a lot, right? I know you're familiar with the Bacero program during World War II, but with this film, Brandon talks about so many things that have led to the Cholo and Pachuco culture. And it wasn't really about gangs and drugs and being a gangster, right? That's what Hollywood likes to portray. It was about going against the government that didn't give us the respect that we deserved. And this film has multiple things that it covers, like the Brown Berets, the Chicano movement, the music, the culture. Low riding is not glorified as something that gangsters do, right? You got to think about the engineering that goes into those vehicles, and it's a representation of themselves, but also their family, right? At these lowrider shows, they're family friendly. There's no crazy stuff going on, and so to try to dispel those myths that Hollywood has put out there, that's a challenge, right? We are in control of our future, but if we let somebody else take it, then they're gonna do what they want with us. And with this film project, I feel very deeply because it's an intro level documentary. There's not a lot of concepts where you're like, "Well, I don't know anything about that. I guess I got to research it before." Everything that is in this documentary is easy for a child to understand and grasp that, and that's very important.
Well, I think that when we look at the scheme of the United States. And say we look back at during the 60s, I know that there's a lot of footage of like Cesar Chavez where he refers to Chicano. He's from Delano, California, was living in Delano, and I think California had much more of a greater population. They still do of Mexicans and Mexican Americans there. And I know that like here in Michigan, we didn't have the population. We didn't have the people that were behind this movement. And it started, like I say, in Michigan. I think it was really growing in at the MSU campus with students that said enough, and they took on the administration of Michigan State University, actually. And so that's why they could identify with that term Chicano, as opposed to, say, our first generation that came to the state of Michigan. And I think there's a beautiful history there. When you look at this documentary, and I've seen parts of it, I haven't seen it in its entirety, but there is some beautiful history of the people that try to make change. The Pachuco. We've all heard and seen the Pachuco dress, and they really, in those days they really went out and dressed up to the dances and even in my generation, when we went to Mexican dances in Saginaw, we dressed up. Today you don't see it as much, but I just want to give some of the reviews that are mentioned on the website for this film. Mark Mohan, he's with Arts Watch. He says, riveting, a powerful reminder that behind almost every stereotype is a story waiting to be told. As well as the Portland Tribune, they say a fascinating examination of the Mexican American experience. And Rosa Parra, she says, she's from In Their Own League. She says, inspirational, informative, thought-provoking, and timely. So this film, it's a documentary film, and it is you're able to see it. It's going to be shown at different locations, and we're going to talk about that when we come back. We're going to go into commercial, and we're going to talk more with Angelo Cap, who's behind this movement to celebrate this documentary as well as Chicano Week here in the state of Michigan. We'll be right back. Well, there you have it, the first part of our show here on Mi Gente on Air. And I just want to, continually welcome people into the Facebook social media platform where we do have some leaving messages. I've got Antonio Villarreal. He says, hey, primo. I didn't know he was your primo. He says, and that number doesn't include those without papers. So I'm sure there are more. He's talking about the number that you gave. Yes. Also, we have... it's not a name. They go by Bance one. It says, I see a flag that says you're American and a pride that says you're Mexican. Works for me. So there's people on here, Cindy Cap, and I'm sure that's a relative of yours. And it's funny that we have a number of different cities that are going to be showing the show, but tell me why Saginaw doesn't have an actual location yet.
So actually Saginaw Valley is they're doing 3 screenings of the film.
When's that going to take place?
And so we haven't really promoted that yet right now.
Okay.
But I would say keep out for Cesar Chavez.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that's going to be coming down the pipeline. I'm glad we were able to do this on the social media rather than announce it on the show. But let's go back into the show. Let's talk more with Angelo. And we welcome, again, your comments and your concerns here on the social media platform.
You're listening to Mi Gente on Air on WSGW.
Welcome back. Welcome back, Mi Gente. Thank you for joining me tonight. I am your host, Larry Rodarte. And my guest tonight is Angelo Cap. and he is behind a movement of celebrating Chicano Week here in the state of Michigan, which is February 2nd through February 8th. And there is a documentary called American Homeboy that is getting a lot of attention, and it was done very well and talks about the history of the Chicano movement in the United States. And so, tell us, Angelo, where is this documentary going to be shown? You have 3 different locations: Flint, Detroit, and where's the other one?
Yeah, so the first showing is going to be at U of M Flint, the Kiva Theater, and then Grand Rapids, and then we have Lansing, and then we have the Senate Theater in Detroit. In Senate Theater Detroit on February 3rd, that's a Saturday. We're actually going to be hosting the first Chicano History Week after party at Love and Tequila.
I just saw that place
Yeah.
last night. We were down there for the Madonna concert.
Okay.
And we were caught in traffic, believe it or not. And I saw that place, and they've got some great things happening down there at that club. So, it's really nice to see the variety of entertainment that they do have there too. It's not any just specific. And so they're going to be featuring that movie documentary American Homeboy on February the 3rd, and that's a Saturday.
Correct. Yep.
And tell us the other dates and locations for it.
Yep. So we're going to be starting Wednesday, January 31st at U of M Flint, the Kiva Theater. Then February 1st, we're going to the Wealthy Theater at Grand Rapids. February 2nd, we're going to be in Lansing. I have confirmation on a location, so that should be out later today or tomorrow. And then February 3rd, that's our wrap up in Detroit at the Senate Theater. And man, it's a beautiful theater. It fits timely with this movie, right? Because I think when you watch a movie, you get only 3 touch points, right? You look at it with your eyes, you hear the score, the music, what's going on, and then you hope to feel something from it, right? And how we got everything set up with having live art by muralists and stuff like that, and the Q&A with the director. We have a awesome panel that's going to be speaking on their truths, right? And corroborating with the documentary, right? Because I think a lot of this stuff isn't taught in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so recently in Michigan, back in 2022, there was a Senate bill number 798 that was on the floor, and this bill was specifically talking about teaching our history, right, with the Latin American, Hispanic American, and Caribbean Americans in K through 12, right? And there was also a couple other Senate bills, Senate Bill 797, 799, and 800 that have to do with Asian Americans, African Americans, and such forth. But I really think, this is very important because, I went to the USHLE conference back in 2019. And for those of you who don't know the USHLE conference, it's the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute. And when I tell you I went to this conference, there was at least 1,500, 2,000 Latinos in there. I never have ever been in a room where I felt the energy, right? I always go into places where I'm typically the minority, but, at the USHLE conference, there was a lot of history that was taught, right? They have a lot of great speakers. And I learned about Mendes versus Westminster, right? And that set the precedent for a lot of important legal, laws in our country, especially with desegregating the schools, right? And so if you think about it, why isn't that being taught in K through 12? Why do I have to find out years later about this? And really, this is about sharing our history with people because our history, we're a warm, loving culture, right? When you come over to somebody's house, we're going to feed you. You can talk at the table and we don't judge. And so, our culture is very loving. And I don't know if there's a lot of other cultures like that, especially in today's times where, the family dynamics are definitely changed because of COVID, right? I mean, you couldn't see people during the holidays, and it changed the way we operate as people, right? Back in the day, you went into the bank to pay your bills. You went into the store to buy things. Nowadays, you do everything online. You do it on your phone, And so our connection points with another human being, they're very slim. It's only on digital platforms.
Yes, and that's That's one of the things that I think we struggle with, especially the older generation, because we lived in a time when there were no cell phones and there was no internet. And, that was the internet was one of the major things that changed the world.
Yeah.
Just like the wheel, just like the printing press, the internet in our time frame really changed the world. But those of us, especially in the baby boomers, we're caught in a time where we have seen so much change, probably the most in human history, actually, in terms of how we lived, say, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and how we live today. And sometimes it's to the detriment of our psyche, I think, because you hear people who talk about how social media can really uh, be a disconnecting factor, like you're saying, because we're not having that human experience, is human experiences that we did, you know, uh, in earlier years. And so, that's something that I know I struggle with a little bit, because it just seems that life was a lot easier in those years.
Yeah.
And it's everything has changed from the media. And the media gets knocked, and the journalists sometimes. And it's just so polarizing, the way that our country has been in the last 8 years, 10 years. And, I hope that we're going to change, and we're going to move forward from this time in history where everybody seems to be at odds, not only on the roads, but also, just in communities. So, I'm glad that you're doing this, to bring out the history of the Chicano movement. Um, I know that Rosa Morales, she lived it at MSU in the 60s. And, she's still around, as well as Rosendo Reyes. These are people that really were in that Chicano movement at MSU back in the late '60s, and I hope that they'll be a part of this as well, to express how they. Do you know who your panel is that's going to be talking?
So far, we got one confirming, and I have a couple others that I'm working on as far as a Detroit artist. But we have John Ayala's son, Andrew Ayala,
Oh, great,
and
great.
he's a teacher out there in Texas, and he brings a breadth of knowledge. And it's very important that that things are different in Texas, obviously, right? With
Right.
their Hispanic population out there, and to try to get something like that over here in the Saginaw public schools, or even in the Michigan schools, that'd be an awesome thing for the kids, because we all know about Columbus Day, we all know about all these other holidays, but how many people know about Cesar Chavez, right?
Yeah.
How many people know about what Cinco de Mayo is really about? I think people have corporatized a lot of these holidays, and it's just like another day to party, drink, barbecue. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in Mexico, they don't even celebrate that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're so different from what's reality from, truth. And so I think, just learning about our history, having those conversations with like Rosa Morales, a lot of these people that have those lived experiences, we don't need to look at the internet. We could talk to them, right? They're here right now. And, we got to take advantage of that, because those stories that they possess, there's something you could take away from that.
Oh, sure, sure. I want to bring up something. I got a actual email today from the Director of Donor Services and Special Initiatives with the Saginaw Community Foundation, because they're going to be having a press conference in regards to a diverse group of individuals that have engaged in a series of discussions to secure an answer to the question, what can we what can be done to expand awareness, appreciation, and commitment to the ideas of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice among people of Saginaw County. So that's something that we better be at the table for.
Exactly.
Because it's important. And I have a lot more history than you in this community. Obviously, like I said, Angelo, I knew his grandmother, Victoriana, and she lived on 21st Street. She was a wonderful lady. And her sister was Mary Lou Mason. And she was the director of the Hispanic Commission appointed by Governor, I believe it was Blanchard, 38 years ago. But she did do a lot of historical things in our community to advance the Mexican American experience in the state of Michigan. And Angelo, this is his family, and I knew your mom, Martha Cap, as well.
Yep.
Your uncle Gene Cap, Pauline Cap. I mean, all those Caps. And this is just wonderful to see a young individual involved in our community that is going to lead the way in the next generation of Mexican Americans. And I hope that we stand behind this Chicano Week movement as a community, because we have to be at that table. Just like we're at the table here with WSGW now with this show, Mi Gente on Air, we have to be at the table when we talk about the history of Chicanos in the United States, as well as those that are considering that movement an essential part of their lifetime, those that fought against discrimination at MSU or beyond. I know that the Unión Cívica Mexicana back in 1945, that was the whole reason why they came to an existence, because of the discrimination against the farm workers at the time that were migrating to the Saginaw area, that were working in the fields, and then they eventually got jobs at the gray iron plant and plants around Michigan, and so they stayed, and that's why many of us are here today. Because they were searching out for that American dream. And so, there's a whole history, there's a whole lot of fruits to their labor. And I think individuals like Angelo, like myself, those of us who are trying to make a difference in the community today in this generation, we are that American dream. We were their American dream, what they may not have always understood and what they envisioned, but they knew that they wanted a better life from the discriminatory practices that were happening. And then their parents, such as my great-grandparents, they left Mexico during the revolution to get away from the atrocities that were happening there and looking for that better life in America. And isn't it funny that here we are in 2024, and I'll say it here, there's a lot of immigrants that are coming over the border for the same reason, because they want that better life. And, politically, we can talk about a whole political thing if we wanted to, but we won't tonight. But, the immigration laws and the system here in America needs to be fixed. And that's all I'm going to say on that. But it's exciting for you at this time, isn't it, to be involved with this kind of movement of Chicano History Week. And I want to give credit to your brother as well. Tell me about your brother, because I think he's doing great things in the community, and I've seen you guys grow up, and I see him involved as well. Tell me a little bit about your brother.
Yeah. So, with me joining the workforce early, I didn't go to college. I wasn't a traditional student, but my younger brothers, especially my brother Ruben, he was always a studious person, right? And I used to see him at 2 o'clock in the morning doing homework, like in 5th grade, and I would be like, "Dude, you're crazy! I'm going to sleep," But he always had that determination and that drive, and so he's been at U of M for a long time, right? He's in his doctorate program right now. And I always joke with them, and I say, "You still don't know your ABCs, right?"
Mm-hmm.
But no, he his background, he worked in DC, right? He met Vice President Biden at the time. He does so much stuff, and now he's working for the Kresge Foundation, and he's actually in Austin right now because he's part of the education program that they have. And he's a role model, because he might be my younger brother, but I always look at them as like, wow, I couldn't even imagine that, when we were kids, that we'd be in these positions.
Yeah.
And I think that it's possible for every child to have their dreams come true, whatever that might be, right? Success is different to everybody, but I feel like these opportunities that sometimes are taken away because of budgetary funding with the school districts and stuff like that, that we need to focus on our kids, because those are our future leaders. And you could always judge a country based on how they treat the elderly and how they treat the young. And we need to do more.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And Ruben is not your only brother though.
No, so my youngest brother Jamie, he's actually in Texas, and he works for Apple, right? He has a phenomenal job. He works on the business end, so he if a business owner calls and says, "Hey, we need tablets, we need phones, we need computers," he's the guy to go to. But he's not looking at it as making commission because they don't make commission, right? He really wants to address the customer's needs. And sometimes people say, "Well, I want this, I want all the bells and whistles," but they don't need it, right? And so, Jamie is a very humble guy. He just had his first child a couple years ago. He's married, and out there, there's so much to do. The weather's different, and he's always given back to the community. There, I don't know. I think it just stemmed from our family values. My grandfather um, had a farm in Carson City, and he had a produce market, and it used to be called Angelo's Produce Market, right? And so my grandmother, she would be selling produce, right? And ladies would stop by and say, "Oh my gosh, these cantaloupes are so sweet. They're the best. I never had none like this. Where's Angelo at?" And my grandma would say, "He's back in Saginaw." And then after a while, she understood that they think that my grandfather's name is Angela. So I'd have to tell him the story about how my grandfather named the produce market after me. And yeah, just having those family values at a young age, it's where I'm at today. And I always try to give back to the community because I feel like even if we're in a position that we might not be at financially secure, right, or health wise, there's always somebody out there that's doing less than us, right? And that could use a little boost. So why not be that person? And you never know whose day you could brighten up.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to mention too, as I have this platform here. The beginning of the year here in Saginaw, we got a few knocks, because of some crime that was happening in our community, some unfortunate incidences. And I just want to say that Saginaw is a great place to live. I think I've traveled the world. I've been to many cities, and everything that sometimes we get knocked for, it may be just because of one incident or one individual, or one accident, but we have a lot going on, wouldn't you agree? And I mean,
Absolutely.
for our Hispanic community, our Latino community, we are very vibrant. We have a lot of events that are happening, that are top notch, I think. When we compare us to the others in the state of Michigan, we're right up there as an entity, a group of people that are celebrating their culture and heritage. And it's nice to see Angelo involved with him. I've worked with you before, and it's awesome to see. And I think your grandmother would be real proud to see what you are doing. And I remember her little laugh.
Right.
She was kind of quiet and all, but and I think back of those days when on 21st Street when we were teens, and I was hanging out with your Uncle Gene and your Aunt Genevieve, and I remember your Grandpa Cosme Cap and
Yep.
how quiet he was. Now he was real quiet, but a beautiful family, just a beautiful family, and I'm so happy to see that you're descending from that. And I think that's a part of when I always talk about is if you don't know where you're from. It's kind of a hindrance, because if you do know where your background and where you come from, you're a much stronger person.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so I wholeheartedly believe that. And if you're an individual who may not understand or know uh, the beginnings of your family's history here in the United States, I would research it. I would really research it, because if you don't know like where your grandparents were born from or some of their history, um, I think it can be very beneficial to an individual to know that. And for young people who have children today, make sure that they know where their grandparents come from, because it's important. And I think that you never know in their lifetime down the road when they're going to need that piece of information, and it can help them to be stronger people. So that's a lot said. We had a lot said. So I just want to go back. We want to circle back to Chicano History Week 2024 is going to be February the 2nd through February 8th. And that is proclaimed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She honors that and made a proclamation last year. And it's been celebrated for many years in the state of Michigan. And I'm sure not just here in the state of Michigan, but also in different states, especially in California in the United States. So again, Angela, just tell us a little bit so that if you're have one of my listeners listening, tell them where they can actually see the documentary American Homeboy during his Chicano History Week and the locations and times.
Yep. So the very first source you can go to is chelatv.com, and that's a subscription platform where the movie's on. So if you're physically handicapped and you can't get out, or you're sick or anything like that, that opportunity is always available to you. But in person with the director, we're going to have them January 31st at U of M Flint at the Kiva Theater. Then February 1st, we're going to be in Grand Rapids. February 2nd, we're going to be in Lansing. And tomorrow, hopefully, I'll be able to announce that location. And then February 3rd, we're going to be at the Senate Theater with the after party to follow at Love and Tequila.
Okay. And where was it again in Grand Rapids, the location?
At Wealthy Theater.
Wealthy Theater. Yep. Okay. And if anybody wants to or has a question after the show and they may want to call you, where can they contact you, Angelo?
Yeah, so I created a Facebook and an Instagram, Chicano History Week. Or you could check out the Facebook or Instagram Nuestra Cultura 2024. Or you could reach out to my Gmail. It's nuestracultura.mi@gmail.com.
All right. All right. Well, I'm glad that John Ayala is an inspiration to you as well as he is to me. And his son, I think, is doing some great things. And John has tried to connect us together. And for whatever reason, we just haven't. But, I look forward to that in the future to talk about how he can know a little bit more history in regard to the Unión Cívica Mexicana and the history of Saginaw. I feel that sometimes as my involvement with the Civica, I've become kind of the keeper of that history. And I do have a lot of documents as well from the early founding of the organization to present day. And so there's just a lot of good information. And next year in 2025, the Unión Cívica will be celebrating 80 years.
Oh, that's
Can you believe that?
amazing.
And that's really something, because those contemporary organizations that were founded around the time when the Civica was, before and after, there's only one left really in the state of Michigan, and that's the Comité Committee down in Detroit, in the Southwest
I
community.
didn't know that.
So the one in Pontiac, I think, is no longer there. The Lomelita, as well as the one in Lansing. I don't know about Grand Rapids though, but anyways, there's just so much, and I just want to thank you, Angelo, for being with us today. The show went really fast, and I hope we got a good information out there for everybody. Remember, the mariachi shows are coming January 20th to SVSU. As well as to University Musical Society in Ann Arbor. They've got one on the 23rd as well. Mariachi shows, get your tickets. And I wish I had that information so I could tell you online again, but we had a whole show on it last week. And I want to just encourage everybody out there in my listening audience, whether you're Hispanic or non-Hispanic, to support these events, because diversity is always a plus in our community. So until next week, I'm Larry Rodarte. We'll see you again on Mi Gente on Air. Adios. So there you have it. We're back here on the social media, and just want to congratulate Angelo for doing a great job here tonight. What was your experience like here on Mi Gente on Air?
Well, I would have to say, I think I only got like 3.5 hours this morning of sleep, right?
Oh my God.
But no, just blessed and honored, right? Really. Because, my whole life I've been trying to do stuff that was positive in the community and be a role model for my children. And like I said, I used to procrastinate and say, well, the time is not right now, right? I have things to do. Then I had a motorcycle accident back in July of 2022, and that really put me out of commission. And just that experience alone, um, it allowed me to think, right? Because the world slowed down for me, and I just came up with a plan. I'm like, I'm going to start doing stuff because in October of 21, I was sick with COVID in the hospital, and so that's 2 times that I was on death's door. And I was like, all these things that I have ideas for to do in the community and the state and hopefully the country one day, I'm never going to do them if I just don't start, right? And so the beginning phase, it's going to look ugly, right? I mean, if I had a dedicated team, if I had money to throw at everything, we'll get there. But I'm just embracing all this knowledge in the journey, right? Because it's the journey that really gets you to the next level. If everybody wants to work out and look good for the new year, they go get on these diets and they watch what they eat. But if you don't stay dedicated and disciplined to that, you're not gonna be grateful for the rewards at the end, right? And so you have to go through the bad to get through the good.
Exactly. Nicely said. Well, that's it, Saginaw. We have Angelo Cap here with us tonight on Mi Gente on Air, and he's done a wonderful job to present Chicano History Week and what's going to be happening February 2nd to February 8th. So I hope everybody will go out and support this endeavor, whether you're in Detroit or Grand Rapids or Lansing or Saginaw. The showing of the documentary will be at the Flint Kiva. That's not too far. And let's continue to support and be positive. Spread love, not hate. That's what I always say. So we'll see you next week again. Thank you, Angelo Cap. And thank you for being with us here.
Thank you, Larry.
Down here. Adios.